Hello and welcome to the Work Inspired podcast. I'm your host, George Lucas Pfeiffer, and on this show, we're extremely fortunate in that we get to talk to a diverse set of leaders from different industries, different backgrounds, different roles, and different types of organizations. BOS, which is the company that I work for, creates workspaces. We're in the business of creating places where people work. And so anytime we have a leader on the show who's passionate and knowledgeable on workplace, I get really excited. Today, we have one such leader. Todd Emeott, who is the principal at Lamar Johnson Collaborative, or LJC, a design firm here in Chicago, is here to talk with us about modern workplace, why it's relevant, how to get people back to it, and other things that are top of mind for most leaders right now. Let's not waste another minute. Let's get into the conversation. You're going to love it. Work Inspired starts right now. Todd, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
I know we've rescheduled this a couple of times, but I'm so thrilled to have this conversation and can't thank you enough for lending your expertise and your inspiration to the Work Inspired podcast.
Of course, thank you for having me. And I was very honored to even be invited to this. You know, what I have to say, who knows?
Oh, it's going to be great.
I hope it helps. And
you've got a lot of experience and I think a lot of relevant experience to our listeners. So let's dive right in. Let's start with your professional story. How'd you get to where you're at today?
Okay. So I didn't start in design. My goal, I think, getting into college was to find a job that made money and, typical, story. But I started in dentistry. And in that process, I actually took part in a competition. I also liked acting. And so I took part in a acting and modeling and singing competition, and it actually went really well. And so at some point in college, I had all these offers to go off and be an actor and do something different and exciting. And my parents stepped in and they were like, absolutely not, which, I'm thankful for because, they wanted me to do it. Like they knew that I had a passion for it, but they also wanted to make sure that I got, a grounded career that just in case I could fall back on. So, I went to Fair State University in Michigan, and they're affiliated with a college called Kendall College of Art and Design. And so just through happenstance, I was walking by the college. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Nice. And I saw a flyer for interior design, and it just it grabbed my attention. I didn't even know what it was. I honestly had no idea what interior design was. And so it was just that moment where it's like butterflies, like something special is happening here. So I thought, okay, I could get my degree as a Bachelor of Fine Arts and still kind of play around with acting to some degree. And, so time goes on, I'm in the interiors program, and I just, fell in love. It was cool. It was just something so creative, something different. And it really opened my mind to just how many different things are out there in the world. And in design and architecture was just like exciting. It was really, really exciting. So I fell in love with it. And as opposed to really keeping my focus on acting, I think I just learned that I could look at every single project, every single client, and it was like a new script. It was like a new story to be told. And I think that's the realm that I really fell in love with. So yeah, I graduated in the wonderful time of 2007, 2008. So that recession period that some of us had to live through, which was challenging. I think a lot of people did not have the same opportunity that I did. I was very lucky. I got a job in an interior design and architecture firm. And the silly thing that happened was, there was 13 designers. I was the brand new, bright-eyed, young designer. And then through the challenges of the recession, everyone was let go except me. Wow. So I went from the entry level, know nothing to like senior designer and, like that. Yeah. And it was kind of a roller coaster. I was thrown in front of clients right away. I was thrown into new designs and challenges that I had no clue what I was doing whatsoever. But I just rode that wave. I had to, act. I had to act like I knew what I was doing. But I think what was really cool about that is I was learning the whole time. And I think that idea of kind of that improv, just connect, be in the moment and react. And that's what saved me. Yeah. And I think that was forcing me into realizing that this isn't about knowing everything. It's about listening and learning and then coming up with a creative idea to solve. So that really just, I think, projected me into having a wild ride in interior design and architecture of some sort. And so here I am, 17 years later. I moved to Chicago. I work at the Lamar Johnson Collaborative. We call it LJC. It's a great name. Awesome company. I've been there for 9 years, coming up on 10. I'm a principal. Like it was this amazing opportunity to help grow a firm. And we have, when I started there, in the Chicago office, there was 15 of us, and now we're at about 100 in the Chicago office. So it's exciting
That's very cool
to have that happen, and we get to work with all sorts of clients everywhere in the corporate realm. And I've got the luxury of working with every single type of client. So I've done hospitality, tons of corporate workplace, and law and financial services, lots of healthcare, international healthcare, you name it, we get to do it. And it was so exciting. So
how exciting too to first of all find a passion like that, to discover something,
stumble into a passion,
but then also to be able to take two passions and kind of combine them. In that professional experience, you did have to act a little bit. You had to draw on that, what some might find uncomfortable, getting in front of somebody and pretending to some extent. But while you listened and learned, you were able to draw on your thespian background to kind of make it seem real, right? Until it was, and now it is. So let's talk about all that experience you've accumulated. We're here in 2023. We've just gone through maybe something similar as far as crisis, to 2007, 2008 with the pandemic. Yeah, exactly. A lot of unknown and uncertainty, right? Where are we at today? What are some of the major trends in design? I know that's a big loaded question, but what are the high level themes you're seeing when you work with all these different clients? Yeah,
I think, it's a loaded question there because we're re-emerging. I feel like it's this, wake up in the morning and rub the crusties out of your eye. It's a what happened and what's going on? How's the day gonna go? And I think we have the opportunity right now to kind of pause and think a little bit, not just be reactionary, not just react towards, what do we need to do? And I think the thing we need to think about is it's not a trend anymore. Trend is almost a word we don't want to use because that's just reacting to something that, we think might be solving a problem. But I think what we learned in the pandemic is that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to be in the future. So what are those things that we've learned that work, and then what are the things that we've learned we didn't need to do anymore? So we kind of had this, use what works well, but also what was so helpful to us and see if we can merge them. So that's why obviously, the world is talking about hybrid, right? A hybrid workplace, the hybrid, the way we do things. And I think it's more or less about making sure that there's quality to what we do in design and in the workplace itself, and not necessarily, just trying to do something quick and flashy. Sure. So that way we're following buzzwords,
something
I guess.
Trendy.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of what we're doing right now is listening to our clients and hearing what challenges and concerns they have about coming back to the workforce. What are they doing to invest their money and create and find the right space to really truly, provide what this new hybrid world is. A lot of our clients are concerned about the amount of days to come into the office, and they've learned that it's actually valuable to not come in every single day, but they are missing out on one of the core values of what an organization is, and that's people. Right? People are the amenity, the human aspect of what we're doing, and being together outweighs anything you can do to, creatively design a solution. It's just, we're humans, right? So I think the idea is focusing our attention on what is so important about coming together and being in the same place at the same time, and what can we do to support that? What are the features that are gonna support that, and what can we do to not waste, square footage and dollars if we don't know what the future is really going to hold for us. And so that's kind of the little realm we're in right now.
And it's an interesting period because during the pandemic, clearly things changed so quickly. There was so much uncertainty. You could put together a strategy and it could be completely irrelevant in 2 weeks, you know?
Absolutely.
And now as we reemerge, as you say, we can start to look a little bit further out. And clearly when you make decisions around real estate or interiors, those are longer term decisions, and we can build in as much flexibility and agileness as we can, but we still are making a sizable investment to support our teams. And so as we are now able to look a little bit further out than 2 weeks, like we were in 2021, how are companies planning for their investments that should last 5 years or sometimes even longer?
I think if it's just looking at, investment, right? Obviously, again, biggest investment, your people. So it's thinking about the way that maybe we used to put a lot more emphasis on cramming as many people into a space as possible. So your square footage was totally dedicated to workstations and the quantity and ratio of private offices and conferencing. But we're now realizing that you need to expand your social space a little bit more. The pantries, the food, the wellness aspect, the welcoming aspect is where people want to spend their time. So that way we are back together, and if we shrink the workspace down a little bit more, because not everyone needs a dedicated space, that's irrelevant for the most part. And for some companies, right? And so that means we have to expand on other spaces that you can go to support your daily needs. Day to day, it's not the same. You shouldn't, some days you're on conference calls all day long. Maybe you don't need to come in that day. You're not engaging with your team, right? But when you're in the office, maybe half your day is on conference calls. So you need a space to go to, because all of us in an open office work environment, all with headphones on, it gets chaotic, and then you need a break too. We still need our wellness spaces. So it's putting more into shared resource spaces, like more conferencing, more phone rooms, things like that everyone can use. And even as opposed to having private offices that are owned, it's shared private office spaces. And it's just the interior of those spaces need to have multifunction as well. You can't just have a desk sitting there and not have AV technology and capabilities. Like, that has to happen. So invest in your space, and even if it's just a 10 by 12 office, realize it doesn't need to be owned. It could have technology so that way 3 to 4 people can come and meet in that space and use it as a conference. So that's that flexibility right there. From a design lens, it's what can you do to have a space, be a conference room today, and then tear down a wall and make it a bigger working team space. And then if you have to put the wall back up, just think about those minimal changes you can do to have big impact as you grow. Throughout the years, you're going to learn a little bit more about what has been successful, and understand that testing space is going to be the only way to really solve the problem. You can't solve it today. You have to kind of live through it a little bit.
Yeah. That comfortable with saying we don't know. Yeah. So let's take small steps so we can adjust and tweak as we go.
Absolutely.
I think it's interesting also that you hear, that the carrots some companies are using, like the free meals, or, are maybe not working as well as they'd like. But then on the flip side, you hear exposure to a senior leader is. And what I think is interesting about that is that often it's those gathering places, whether it's the pantry, the food, or the common area or the open space, that's where that exposure will happen, right?
Absolutely.
So like you almost have to be able to join the two together. Yeah. Free meals on their own, where you just go and grab it and come back to your heads down workstation, and that's not going to be enough to get people in, right?
Absolutely.
But it's how do you create a space that cultivates culture and interaction and collaboration?
Yeah,
that I
absolutely.
think is what we're after.
We always call that the casual collision, right? You didn't intend to sometimes have that interaction with someone. It didn't need to be work related, right? It can be just it's forming that bond. Sure. But that's where it's important to think about, your interior environment and think, okay, we want to create a staircase that connects us. It promotes wellness. It creates that idea that we can collide and have a quick conversation and catch someone's eye. But then at the base of that stair, having a space to gather and having the food right there, right? So always really, really creating a space that everyone can be drawn to incidentally have to make eye contact and have to say hello. And that awkward moment of being like, I actually don't know that much about you, but how was your weekend? Right. And you don't know what comes from that. It could be it could be gold.
And even if that's an uncomfortable thing, it's a good thing, because sometimes I think when we're remote and isolated, we get a little too comfortable and we don't change, we don't grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not being together day to day has distanced that connectivity. I knew when we came back to the office, I remember coming back and all of a sudden being in a meeting and saying to two people, I was like, who are you? and they're like, oh, we work here. And I was like, I had no idea. Like, it was embarrassing for me because, I should have known, but I never had that opportunity to shake their hand or say hello because the world was disconnected a little bit more. And so it's important. And, then I work with them every day. And so, without that awkward bump into moment.
Yeah.
Who knows how much time would have gone, without me even realizing it, on my part.
Well, let's talk a little bit about hybrid strategy, because you're right. I mean, it's clearly here to stay, but it seems to be different depending on the company and how they're set up and what their goals are and their culture type is. Yeah. So we're currently 3 days a week in, 2 days out. Some companies are less than that. Some are more. Some are more rigid. Some are more flexible with choice. We just talked to a senior leader at Hiffman that they're 5 days in a row and then 5 days out.
Oh, interesting.
More like a fireman schedule, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But have you noticed any trends that seem to work better than others, or is it truly you got to figure out what works best for your organization and pave your own way?
I think it's what works best for the organization because certain groups operate differently. So some are on client focus, right? They're on client teams. They work together, intensely for a week or 2 weeks sometimes. Some people are on long-term projects, right? And within that, you can't necessarily say, okay, everyone's here on Monday. So if I had to come in every Monday, but my day is loaded with client calls, what's the point, right? But that's the way my organization is structured. So we have adopted the, 1 to 2 days, flexible if you need to work from home, but make that your own choice. But always just try and drive that focus of being together when you can. But we do have other companies that say, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday are your days in the office. That way we can all be here, and then we shut the lights off on those other 2 days. But if you want to come in, of course, come in. But it really does depend on how you operate. I really think that's what you need to look at and think, are we capable of forcing people to be there on the same day? And are we engaging with clients as much as we used to? Are we as an organization traveling to clients more? Are clients coming to us more? That's all going to be that degree of how things work. And then, the 5 days in, 5 days out is great. But at the same time, then you go on PTO and then all of a sudden you're there for once a month. I don't know. I don't think there's a perfect, one size fits all, reaction to this. And so as we're designing every single client, we're listening to that.
You really got to understand their specific use case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You have to ask those questions. Otherwise you're just designing, to the wrong solution potentially.
And designing around the fact that what they're doing today might, like you just said, is probably not going to be what they're doing at the end of this year.
We would like people to have such a great interior office environment with such a sense of space that you said 3 days a week, but people are coming in 4.5 because they like being at work. And honestly, that's the way our company is right now. We have people coming in every day because they like being in,
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What have you seen be the best drivers of people coming in when you talk about creating a great workplace? And we've said the phrase "earn the commute," or even flight to quality. Like those buzzwords you hear. Are what's working? What's driving people back in? Because it seems like leaders do want people back.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It maybe was a question mark back a year and a half ago, but most leaders we talk to now are saying we know we need people back in at least to some extent.
Yeah.
How are they getting their teams?
Yeah, it's always going to be a case-by-case basis. But the things that I think we have learned is and observed, I guess, is, anything that will be that kind of draw, anything that will say, there's value here that you just can't get in the comforts of home. Right. And obviously like mentorship and collaboration are those underlying needs. They have to happen, but you can't say, well, you have to come in for mentorship, right? You can't can't force mentorship. So you need to have a workspace that kind of exceeds what you get at home. That's ergonomic comfort. That's the ability to have a choice, where you can work and how you can work, and making sure that every workspace itself is better equipped with the technology you need, the monitor, the video conferencing, or even just the whiteboard space, and knowing that sometimes you need a room that you can have a team lock yourselves into for a week and all work something out and then disperse. So it's just, if your space doesn't support those needs and doesn't recognize that, people could just be at home, then it's going to be hard to bring them in. So you really do need to invest in the quality of the interior of workspace. And amenity wise, it's not just food. It's also the wellness factor to it. Are there elements that you can have, the fitness center, if that's your version of wellness, or, just quiet spaces or escape spaces that people can be away from their kids for a little bit, or even their pets are distracting. Like, there are real distractions from working at home that just, you can't have that every day. You need to get out. So
is that, it's interesting because when we talk about people wanting to come back in, obviously there's a lot of benefits at being at home, just from a flexible, I make my own schedule, I kind of do my own thing, and productivity, the question of productivity, I think there's both sides of that story, and are we more productive? And I think it's some form of a mix. But when you are designing a space, I guess my question is, I'm thinking of a classroom. You mentioned kids. I've got kids. If they go to school during the pandemic, they were remote. As far as I know, most school districts aren't offering some form of some of the kids are in the classroom and some of the kids are at home, right? They're not trying to jam the hybrid into the classroom. And I feel like we have to do that in the workplace. And there's technologies and certain layouts, and we can try to accommodate it. But at the end of the day, things like mentorship and development and team building and innovation even, it's really hard to provide the equity to those remote when you've got a group of people in the space, right? So is that more of a policy and kind of just organizational communications type of a solution? Or are you working with clients that are saying, no, we need to make sure that the people that are remote are having just as much I think digital equity is the word I've heard, as those that come in and actually are there in person?
I think that's a challenge to say that if you are truly a remote team member, and we have remote team members, we have some people in individuals sitting in a city by themselves that don't get to come in, and so that the attention that they're getting isn't as there every day, like you get from having just someone to your left and someone to your right to laugh with and just joke around with throughout the day. And so, it does take the investment of probably promoting that they can travel and spend time and actually invest. If they're a quality employee, there's a reason that you've taken that talent, because talent doesn't have to exist in one city. Right. I think, we recognize that talent can be everywhere, and that talent can be part of anything that we produce in. And if you are willing to kind of risk them being a little bit more on their island, invest that back and let them come to your space, or spend time to go out to them as well, and don't let them feel alone. And I think that's just even between offices, if you're a company that has multiple locations, it's hard to operate on your own little islands and not have that cross, community collaboration. And so as leaders in your organization, you have to be thinking about that. Right. You have to think, how can we blend the culture, throughout the whole planet that we're on, depending on where they're at, and just make sure that it's a new way of thinking. You're not just responsible for those that you see with your eyeballs that walk in. You really have to kind of even put on your calendar some time to reach out, make sure we're all, wellness check.
Well, it was interesting because before the pandemic, I was shocked at how slow video conferencing was to take off. That technology has been around for a long time. But so many clients that we were, our partners, they just didn't do it, and it was because we were largely in person. And even if we were connecting two offices, we'd go travel, and then the pandemic came and we all instantly went to, well, not all, but most went to, we're going to be fully remote, and we had to do video conferencing. And now we're in this weird space where it's like, all right, a lot of people have come back, or we're back a couple days a week. And it's just like, how do we figure out like to what extent we should connect those two, the remote and the in-person groups? And to what extent should we just say, all right, it's different to some extent, So like, let's not intentionally remove those accidental collisions or interactions in the office, because we have to make sure that there's a Zoom call attached to every single scheduled meeting, right? But at the same time, to your point, there's great talent. And one of the benefits of technology and the things that has come out of the pandemic is we can now think about hiring from all over the country if we want, right?
Absolutely.
And so how do we find the opportunity, but still navigate the challenges of both sides of that story? Right?
Yeah. And that's always just dependent on the situation, that you're in. And there is something actually, I guess you can connect digitally. Like that's okay to have a one-on-one, Zoom call with your face, close to the camera. It is more intimate than sitting in a conference room and seeing 5-10 people in a room. And that's technically, yes, you're in the room together. But it just doesn't have that same direct connection. So, there's moments where you can look at a meeting and say, okay, this is more personable. Like if we have to do a remote, interview for a new project, we don't like all sitting in a room together and having the client virtual and thinking we can connect that way. We prefer to sit side by side if we need to and be on individual camera and focus. And so there's that just connect. That's the closest we can get with the digital screen in front of us, right? And then there are those moments where it does feel good to have the group all together. And unfortunately, 1 or 2 people can't make it. So they're on camera, but it feels like we're all kind of working together in a group. So there's just a degree of, I think, a new culture. There's social norms of Zoom call. I don't know how to say it, but
like you don't pop out during the pandemic. It's really easy to click hide your video, and then you're like, but like think about being in a meeting and I'm just gonna pop out for a second and come back, and it is so interesting, and also even the timing of it. You can go from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call, but then we get back to the workplace, and you can't really easily work while you're in a meeting anymore. So when do you get your work done if you have meetings all day? But you also have to go from space to space. So as you guys design space, I'm sure that's what you're thinking about is how do we support? It's really a new way to meet with people, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And can I meet very casually and just sit at my workstation and do something real quick? Or do I need focus? Do I need acoustic privacy? Do I need, that layer, but do I need to have a giant space dedicated to that purpose today? No. Or is there a moment when I'm having a very, personal call and I can't have people around me listening to this, but I have to, that's that wellness factor, you have to be able to have options, and you as an individual really need to own, I think that understanding of saying, is this going to be awkward if I take this call and I'm the only person in this giant room? Like, is there that connection? Like, don't worry about being impressive and being in this giant boardroom by yourself. Go to a tiny room and look at them in the eyes and say, I'm connecting with you and I'm listening. And,
Are you guys looking at all, look at what Facebook's doing with Meta, and the kind of like I mentioned how long it took to get video conferencing to where it's at. It took the pandemic to get us all on board with that. As some companies are thinking about, I think a lot of us don't think that a Zoom call, a traditional screen replaces this, right?
Right, no.
Sometimes it's necessary because of location differences or just, efficiencies. But like when we think about VR or AR, or so the future technology that might become more immersive or feel more personal, you look at the rise of like esports and the communities that are built via video games, is that part of the conversation at all for you guys with your clients now, or is it still Zoom Teams versus in person?
Honestly, it's still been in the Zoom team world. I think I've realized that the video conferencing realm has started to get a little bit more of the like negative feeling towards it, right? So I think thinking about enhancing that experience with more virtual or VR or different quality of the experience, putting the goggles on and shutting out the world. it just isn't as comfortable. You know, it'll be great if we can do it, but it can't replace, you know? And so do we really need to hyper focus on quality of Zoom call?
Right.
You know, I think it's more or less about making sure the person feels comfortable. They can audibly hear, because it's almost saying, if we could do this, number one priority. This is the easiest, you know, most heartfelt way to communicate. And so we're taking it away, you know, and so it's just, we don't want to be on Zoom, you know, as much as possible.
And I completely agree. And I think we know the workplace is relevant. When you talk to leaders, though, and you get down to an investment, we got to go back to the cost, right? If my company is only willing to come in 2 or 3 days a week, sure, we'd like to earn their commute and have them come in more. But now we've got this recession that seems to be on the verge of coming and maybe hasn't come or is here. The banking issues that are going on. People are thinking about cost, right? So when you talk to leaders, how often do you find LJC convincing them that the workplace is important, or are you seeing the leaders know it? It's just, we just really want to make sure that the one that we invest in is the right one for our team.
That's absolutely it. I do think leaders know it. You know, good leaders, and we like working with good leaders. And so you can't try and push away from the sense of community. You can't try and push away from growing a company with mentorship and fostering and collaboration and in-person learning. But the fear of reacting and making the wrong decision, you know, and investing in something that you can't sustain, you know, sustainable choices are important. And it's okay. I think it's okay to you know, one of the clients that we have that I absolutely love, they love using the word pressure test. You know, you have to pressure test almost every decision that you're making. And it's important to say, you know, are we doing things because it's what we're used to, or is there a way that we can compress it a little bit more? Maybe it's not what we're used to, but at the same time, we know that it's going to sustain itself because we didn't have to build 10 of them. We were able to build 5 of them. And you just make them really hardworking. And that at least is saying, if things, you know, on the pendulum go left and you know, another pandemic hits, you know, and it's a quiet workspace again, is it going to feel quiet and foreign and like there's too much empty space? Are we able to say, if growth happens, it will still feel like a comfortable space. It will still feel like a great space to be, because we have that built-in flexibility for not everyone needing to be in the space. So it's finding that sweet spot. And I think, you know, I don't know if we've been kind of talking about this as a great way to maybe explain this. It's if you haven't heard of it, the Madonna curve. It's this idea of, you know, at a certain point when you realize you've hit, you know, everything, you're it, you need to reinvent yourself, right? So it's a curve that keeps stacking on top of each other. It keeps, you know, you have to realize that you're at that point where you're like, okay, I need to reinvent it, and that idea of, that's kind of like following the trend, right? That's just saying, okay, the trend is irrelevant. We need to keep going. And I think that's where you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble. You know, as a leader, maybe, you know, it's maybe about finding what's really worked and keeping in that band of what's really worked, and go up and down in that band and push a little outside. But if you realize that you're stretching too far, like bring yourself back in a little bit. You don't have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Just what's worked and stay there.
Are you finding that clients are eager to hear from their peers more than they've been in the past about what's worked? Because we saw that during the pandemic, a lot of people wanting to, like, recognizing that there was a lot of unknown, so just wanted to do a lot of peer-to-peer benchmarking. Is that still happening?
Absolutely. I'm surprised that there are some decisions that's kind of come on our plate that we have to talk about that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's an easy one to solve. But our clients are still like, no, we want to hear from more people. You know, they really care. And that's, again, the sign of good leadership. I think we had, you know, prior to the pandemic, there was 50 years of not relatively unchanged expectations of the work environment, where it was 40-hour work weeks. Like we're talking about maybe not 40-hour work weeks. Like that's the new. And the things that we changed in those 50 years, like, they were incremental, you know, we could test something out, see if it would work. If it didn't work, no big deal, you know, but now we're starting a little bit with not a blank canvas, but like a lot of knowns, but what are those things we want to test they're just so much more valuable now. And so I don't think people want to take that risk and say, I, as the CEO or us as the C-suite, want to make the decision for 5,000 people without truly knowing, hey, if we go this route, will you be happy? You know? And I think the reality is, as we're talking to our clients or we're meeting new clients and they're asking us, they're like, so what's the solution for the post, pandemic hybrid world? They're aware of this. And the reality is we haven't tested it long enough. We don't know 100%, but we're learning a lot, and you should learn with us. Yeah. Like let us learn your company and let your company tell us what's really the needs are. And we can work on that dial.
That's why I like the pressure test concept, because you got a lot of clients. There's a lot of companies saying, show me a great example of the post-pandemic workplace, the modern workplace, and we don't have yet is the data. It's been a year.
Calm down.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're able to kind of pressure test a little bit, you can say, well, here's one where we've it's been more a focused effort, and it's not the entire solution, right? But it's like, this is something that's working well, and it's got the capability to be able to flex as we want to just make little micro adjustments. Right?
Yeah. Can we really reduce the amount of unknowns?
Exactly.
Can we really think, okay, confidently, we know you're going to need technology, or we know you're going to need ergonomic support. We know you're going to need at least 3 people to come into this space because it's just the right size, knowing that you can work there comfortably, but invite a couple people in and have a Teams meeting, like work through all those things. And then there will be some little bit of unknowns at the end. But as long as you feel comfortable that they're so reduced that they're low risk, then do it. You know, that's all we can kind of do right now. And I think we're still learning. And I think it goes back to your earlier question. How many days are we supposed to come back?
Right.
You might be wrong.
Yeah.
You might every company might make a decision and then realize, oh, that wasn't the right way to do it. So go for worst case scenario, and not worst case, I'd say best case actually, but say it's every day, everyone's in at 5 days a week, oh my gosh, how are we accommodating this? Right.
Well, and I think the other thing that we still need to see is, like, if you've got one company doing that and another company that's fully remote, you need a little bit of time to say, if they're competitors, which one is succeeding, which one's growing faster, which one's winning, you know?
And that's why I think, even though they can be a compared side-by-side client, or, they're in the same business, that's where you see the brand and the culture.
Right.
That's what's different. Like, it's just their culture. I have some clients that you walk in the front door and you're family. Like, you're just a family member. So you don't need to act like you're, a bigger, more successful ego, kind of driven person, because you get to laugh, you get to have fun, and you relax, and people trust you when you're even relaxing. And I've had clients that are panicking about the idea of being seen like they're taking a break, but they're the same, they do the same thing, and that, again, it's just brand and culture really influence those decisions.
And and then you look at like retention rates, attracting talent, like all these different metrics that are the outcome of a high performing workplace or a successful team. Yeah. And I think we just need a little bit more time and data, right?
And I think that's the flight to quality aspect of this is what are the things that we can do as an organization that when someone walks through the door, they kind of say, like, wow, they take care of me.
Yeah.
That's retention. Yeah. We are humans. We're not cogs in a wheel, and even if you aren't doing the best, even if you aren't spending the most money and being the flashiest, if people walk through the door and they say, I have a space, I'm comfortable, it's easy to connect to people, I'm encouraged, they feed me, like I have coffee, even though it's small, it's big. It's big. Just humanizing that experience, I think, will maintain people so much longer than following, the trend. Yeah. Like the ping pong table is not what kept people here.
Right. Exactly.
It's just a bonus. Right.
What else, as far as 2023 goes, and growth, where are you seeing the major growth now? We've seen some consolidation and some vacancy, and some numbers in a city like Chicago that we haven't seen before, in a while. Yeah. We've seen the industrial section hot, and maybe pulling a little bit. Where's the growth right now?
Yeah. I think we've actually seen a lot more growth in obviously industrial, and innovation spaces, maker spaces, things that I think, being in this kind of renaissance that we're in, we need space to, I think a lot of companies need space to create or react to the new normal. And I think there's some of our new normal is this idea of like convenience at your fingertips. And so a lot of organizations are thinking, okay, what can we do that are promoting your day-to-day convenience factor and create a high quality element that we can deliver to your door. So there's a lot of growth in that realm. And there's also a big focus, which I think is fantastic, on kind of US manufactured and produced, goods and services. And so that is something that we're seeing a lot of growth in. And the other one is anything that's going to be in the realm of promoting and manufacturing something that will be good for sustainability, or like, the climate crisis that we're in, companies that are doing things to do it better and keep it local. Like that's where people are kind of flocking to. Yeah. And so it even though I'm not necessarily addressing workplace in that conversation, there's workplace aspects to it. There's people that need to come together and have a space to create. And that's what I think for 2023, that's where a lot of things are ticking up right now.
Are you optimistic? Are you cautiously optimistic? What's your I know there's a lot of great things going on at your company. Yeah. As far as just the general market and looking 12 months out.
Yeah, I'm optimistic to a fault. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I have the capacity to sit and worry about the future. Maybe it's just my DNA of starting with kind of this hopeful, like, wow, look at me, I made it, and then have it crash and just be like, well, what do I do? So I'm just used to having a unknown and being okay with it. And that's just me. So I am optimistic because I think we've proven, as an industry, as a world, that stuff happens and it can be big stuff, and we will, reinvent ourselves from it. So I could see, I see more people excited about getting out of the pandemic and that next step. I do see that glimmer of excitement and all the clients, and even the brand new projects that we're winning and about to work on, that's their goal. They're excited. And so that's where I'm kind of putting my energy. I'm going to just not pay attention to any of that recession talk. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just compare back to where we were a couple of years ago, we're lucky to be here, right? Yeah, we're lucky to be doing this together. So and perspective, right?
Who knows? I don't know what new thing is going to happen. And we might be focusing on something really far out in the future, and something will kind of come and just completely, rip the rug out from under us. But like, hopefully, similar to my story, like we've all learned that it's okay to quickly adapt. Yeah. It's okay to say, okay, this is the current condition of now. What are we going to do? Right. We
should be more resilient than we were in 2019 even.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Cool. All right, couple of final questions. They can be personal or professional. We just talked about the next 12 months, but we ask everybody, is there something in the year ahead that you're personally looking forward to?
Personally, I'm looking forward to less.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think my husband and I, like, we love to travel. Like, we travel all the time, and I think that's one of the best things you can do. It gets you out of your bubble. Like, I love getting out of my bubble and doing that. But in work has been really exciting. Like, we've had a lot going on, and it's all new, and so that can be a little overstimulating. I think I'm constantly, like, I'm a sponge. I'm just absorbing new things. And they might be things I probably should have learned a long time ago, but I'm okay with that. I like the new aspect to it. But now I'm like, wow, I really need a break. And, I don't think I've recognized how important it is to just have some quiet and some space. Yeah. And maybe that's the value of the pandemic, right? And so I think we've been so excited to come out of it. And so this coming year, I really am looking forward to just letting some negative space exist and not worry about filling it, which is nice. And then, but we'll still do a lot of travel.
Just maybe do a relaxing beach or something.
Yeah, right? Toss one of those in, and it can't hurt.
How about a resource that you found valuable? I mean, you've had a real successful climb of the ladder career.
Yeah.
Has there been a book, a group, a networking group? Clearly you drew on some of your interest as an actor, but what's something that you might share with others?
For me, I'm the jack of all trades and master of none. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I've ever hung on to one thing and said, this is the thing that I need to really hyper focus on to help me develop and find success. I love podcasts. Here we are. Dream come true. But I think that it doesn't need to be a single focused, topic for me. I could listen to a podcast about a gnat and what's happening in farm fields and things like that. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I love that. And so the ability to constantly learn about the randomness of the world. And it also makes me realize that like there are a lot of connections, from very different parts of the world, or very different things that people really focus on, the farmers and what they truly are worried about in the world. And then having to work with, financial services clients and still having both of those humans in my brain, and I think that's the way to, kind of just remind myself like, oh, there's so many ways that we could be collaborating as a species and finding different ways to just connect and reinvent ourselves because we're not connected all the time. Podcasts, anything that you can just learn from.
Well, you mentioned traveling too. Being a sponge, having your eyes open, being curious, going out and experiencing.
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
Right?
That's a great one. Yeah, I think I love going out and trying different food and traveling to different countries, and then you observe their day to day, and then of course you bring it back with you, and you're like, oh, it's so nice there. Grass is always greener, but you can just see the way that they do things differently. Sometimes there's really amazing ideas that you're just like, oh, we're just so used to our way of doing things. And so I think that's important. And it has to be big travels. It's not just going state to state. It's like you have to go internationally and
cultures.
Yeah. We, every year we spend over 2 weeks somewhere else and just try and absorb as much as we can and have a blast. And then, I also think it's important for people to find the right distractions as well. Like step away from work, and find something that you can just completely let your mind wander off. Like I play video games. Like that's my like lower my vibrations thing, and whatever activity you can do to disconnect. So that way when you come back to it, you're more refreshed and inspired.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. Let's say you were retiring to go travel the world tomorrow. Yeah. What's some advice you'd leave behind to someone following your footsteps? Wow.
I think you need to remember that you are in charge. The way I felt like my career went, since I'm retiring tomorrow, because what a great idea. Yeah, exactly. I think that I wasn't afraid to feel like I was in charge, even though, I'm not the boss. I'm just entry level starting or wherever you're at in your career journey. It's not up to other people to tell you what to do. It's not up to other people to tell you how to do it. That information can come from mentors. You find those mentors who help guide you, but realize that you're the one that has to write that narrative, and you're the one that has to say, I do this really well and I want to do this, so I'm going to go seek it out. You have to advocate for yourself. No one's going to just randomly, always at the time you need them to pop up and say, hey, is there anything I can help you with? You might be spinning with that information in your head for a long time until someone finally comes up to you. Like you really need to say, this is what I need. This is what I envision for myself, and pretend you are the boss of that company. Honestly, it just helps feel like, I belong here. I am proud of what I do. I'm proud of the outcome, or I feel a big responsibility to the outcome. And then, just like I said, if you find the right mentor to say, to tell them what your goals are, and then they help, and it could be bad mentors too. Yeah. I have had good mentors and bad mentors, and I like them both because I've learned to say, I seen what you did. I heard the advice you gave me. I'm not going to do that. And that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love that advice. In fact, a previous guest that we had on this podcast, who I think we released the episode today. He's a broker, and on the bottom of his signature, he has a saying on all of his emails, and it says, "No one else is responsible for the road that you're on. That's your own asphalt."
Absolutely.
Asphalt spelled like the paving material.
Oh, got it.
But yeah, it's true. Yeah. You'll have bosses, people will tell you, here's your job description. Yeah. You might have micromanagers, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to grow and to develop and to find mentor. The people that want that are, I think, going to be successful. That
Absolutely.
Own that, right?
And I think that's what, people need to hear. They need to hear and remind themselves of that. And again, does not matter where you're on that journey. Right. You don't know everything either.
No, you never do.
Never do. And you never will. Right. I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. You don't know anything.
Unless you're an actor, you could pretend like you do to impress the client.
Lean in, listen, improv. It gets you there, but it's not lying. It's just, saying like, oh, okay, I can recognize what you're saying. And listen, listen to people, listen to other things that are not yours. Don't walk in with an opinion, walk in and help find the solution,
Well, this has been as wonderful as I thought it would be, Todd. I really appreciate the perspective, the advice. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. This was a blast. I love it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.